大家好，欢迎来到我的 YouTube 频道。所以今天我们一起来看看这个叫做 Why You Should Stop Shadowing 的视频。So we're going to watch this video as it's recommended to me by one of my subs. If you guys got any videos you want me to watch, just put it in the comments below. And I've just realized as I'm looking at the camera, I can see myself at the damn mirror back there, and that's going to wig me out for the rest of the video. Now, shadowing is not something I talk about very often on this channel. I think the only time I've actually spoken about it to some degree was in the hyperpolyglot video review I did, because there was a specific hyperpolyglot who recommended that you start shadowing literally from day one. So what is shadowing? Let's clear that up quickly. Shadowing is when you hear a sentence and as it's being spoken, you literally copy word for word, freaking sound for sound, exactly what you're hearing as it's being said. You're trying to basically become the echo of the sentence. And the idea, the original idea behind it, is that you can find where you don't speak natural or your accent doesn't match the accent of whoever you're trying to shadow at this stage, and basically improve on those like little things. So if you're at the stage where you're trying to improve on those little parts, you're obviously going to be an advanced speaker, yes? If you're trying to shadow from day one when you're a beginner or even like a low intermediate, it's going to be hard because you're going to be listening, you're going to be trying to like wrap your tongue around all these words. It's going to be a mess. And if you do, as that specific polyglot mentioned, literally from day one, you're going to be shadowing stuff that you don't understand at all. So it's going to be almost completely pointless. So anyway, I've almost gone off the deep end right now. Let's watch what this woman's got to say on shadowing and then figure out who she is.
In this video, I'll tell you why shadowing doesn't work. Many influencers are telling
Okay, well, I guess she doesn't like shadowing at all.
you that shadowing or simultaneously repeating English content as you hear it is the best way to improve listening and speaking.
Okay, so there's only one specific polyglot that I'm aware of so far who like drums on about shadowing, and it's the hyperpolyglot I keep mentioning. But I haven't actually heard many others mention it. I've seen videos where people talk about shadowing here and there, but it's not something like they massively promote. If there's someone who's doing like a lot of stuff on shadowing, let me know in the comments below.
They claim that's how interpreters practice. As a professional interpreter, I'm here to tell you
I haven't heard anyone actually make that claim in all honesty.
they are wrong. Hello everyone, my name's Carrie. I spent 13 years as a conference interpreter working with leaders like Warren Buffett and Ray Dalio and for organizations like the UN, Goldman Sachs. Now I
Okay, well, she's got some credentials, so from an interpreter's perspective, we've definitely got to listen to her. Interpreting, what have I done? Well, funnily enough, almost nothing. I did one thing of interpreting way back in the day, which was absolutely like the coolest thing ever. So I remember I was here in Sydney at the Esperanto House, and some businessman came from China. He didn't actually speak English, and he was here, I think, to visit like relatives or something. But anyway, he gave like this big speech about his business, and I stood there on the side, basically interpreting to English what he was talking about, because there was other people in the room who didn't speak Esperanto. And then afterwards, one of the women. Oh my god, my English is failing me. One of the women, who was also a businesswoman herself, she basically was running a similar business to him and decided, you know, she wanted to try and work with him in some way, but she spoke Russian, English, and didn't speak any Esperanto. I had to sit between them, going backwards and forwards, interpreting this whole business conversation. And I've actually done a shite ton of business stuff in Esperanto. I've run a company in Esperanto, so I know all the business lingo in the language. Hell, I've done contracts, I've done freaking shares, everything. You want to know what freaking vesting shares is in Esperanto? I got you, my man. It's plenigotai aktioi. So, like, I know everything about that type of world.
coach busy professionals like you to improve their English communication skills and build confidence at work. Before I dive in, let me clarify something important. There are actually two different practices that people both call shadowing. The first type of shadowing is the interpreter style shadowing. This is where you try to repeat everything simultaneously as you hear it with minimum delay. By the way, there's nothing wrong with the audio here. What you are hearing right now is me shadowing myself. Many influencers
I should have just let her explain it. I think I just wasted my time explaining it.
are promoting this. They claim this is how interpreters practice and get good at listening and speaking. This is what we are discussing today, and I will tell you why they are wrong. The second type of shadowing is the listen and repeat practice. When you listen to a sentence from an audio clip and then you pause that audio clip and then you repeat what you just heard, this is actually a very, very useful practice, and it's not.
Hey, I'm gonna be a bit honest, and I thought she was about to shit on that practice. Like, I had like a bead of sweat coming down the side of my head, because I always talk about listening, understanding, and then repeating. It's like a big part of what I talk about on this channel, so I thought for a second then she was gonna be like, this is an absolute terrible practice. I speak freaking 15 languages, worked at the UN, you don't know what you're on about, and I'll be like, type of thing. But no, so it's good that she's all for that. But I would not call that shadowing. To me, that's not really shadowing. So I'm not sure what to call that specifically. That's like just listen and repeat type of drills. That's what I would call it. But if you call it shadowing, let me know in the comments below.
What we are talking about today. Now we're clear on what type of shadowing we're talking about. Let me explain why shadowing is not the best way to improve your listening or speaking. First of all, I need you to do something for me. Think back to when you first learned to drive. You probably feel very stressed out by just keeping the car straight. Your hands are tense on the steering wheel. You're nervous about drifting too close to other cars. You are constantly making small adjustments just to stay centered. Now imagine when you are struggling with that. Your driving instructor, me, starts yelling at you. Check your mirror. Look at the traffic light. Look at that car. Make a U-turn right now. Now you will freeze.
Okay, the funny thing is she's talking about this like it's a hypothetical, but my wife went through driver training and this was like real life for her. She barely knew how to drive and the guy sitting next to her going, look into your mirror, turn left, look at that light, what are you doing? And she was like, type of thing. So that's a real thing that happened. Anyway, let's talk about her example, her analogy here. I actually think that's a bad analogy. A better analogy would be, let's say you get into a car, you're not great or you're at the beginning stage, and right in front of you is another car and you need to follow their every single movement. That's shadowing, and you need to stay right on their butt. Think of a military convoy where you've got like a truck that's moving at nighttime through the wilderness and you've got another truck right on its bum, and as that truck turns, you turn. You just trust where it's going because you need to stay right on its bum and you don't want to expose your position to others by having extra lights on and stuff like that. So that's more shadowing. It's like he turns left, I turn left. He goes right, I turn right.
Won't be able to do any of those tasks well, and now you cannot even stay in your lane anymore. That's exactly what happens when you try shadowing English. Most of you are still struggling a little bit with just listening comprehension. When native speakers talk fast, your brain is already working overtime to trying to understand and catch every word. Even with 100% focus, fully understanding fast and complex English is very, very stressful. Now with shadowing, you are forcing your overwhelmed brain to do mission impossible. Now,
yeah, so that's why you basically don't do shadowing at the beginning stages or even really the intermediate. It's basically reserved for when you want to get to that stage where you're improving an accent or the melody or the flow of your sentences and stuff. So if you're trying to do it earlier than that, you're probably going to ingrain bad habits because you're going to be just trying to match the speed as opposed to the enunciation of the words.
Now you not only have to understand and catch everything you hear, you also are trying to speak at the same time and monitor if you sound right because you're also practicing speaking at the same time, right? Coordinate your mouth with your ears and somehow keep up with the speed. The end result is that you cannot do anything.
Yeah, so if you're trying to practice speaking, that is very different from trying to improve an accent. So one is focused on the sounds, the flow, the melody, the ups and downs, as opposed to the actual words themselves. And the other one is more focused on trying to form a sentence that makes sense.
Well. I know some of you are thinking, but Carrie, interpreters use shadowing. If that's what professional interpreters use for training, it must work. No, we don't use it for training. I studied at one of the best...
I have no idea about that statement. The only interpreters I know, basically, they're all Auslan interpreters, so they use their hands.
Interpreting programs in the world. You know what? Barely did any shadowing. And I also talked to many of the top interpreters.
If you're an interpreter or you've worked as one, is that true? Do you guys not do any don't do any shadowing as part of your training? I'm very curious about that.
Interpreters I worked with in the market, most of them, like me, do not shadow at all because it doesn't work. Or to be more precisely, it doesn't improve your listening or speaking. Why doesn't it work? Because to learn a skill or to make real progress, you need to focus. That's not just my opinion. It's backed by science. The world's leading expert on performance, Anders Ericsson, you probably have heard about him because he's the writer for Peak, very, very famous.
Never heard of the book.
He studied thousands of top performers to understand why they are different. Why do these people make fast progress when other people make almost no progress? In his study, he discovered something fascinating. People who progress rapidly all share one key trait. They practice with laser-sharp focus on one skill at a time. Meanwhile, people who don't...
I don't feel like you need a study to understand that. Like, to me, that's common sense. I've never read that book, never did any studies on it. But if you're going to focus 100% of your attention on one skill, as opposed to spreading it across a broad array of skills, you're going to be better at that one skill as opposed to others who have spread across a broad array of skills. A great example of this, and it's totally not, language based, is, for example, programming. When I went through programming school back in the day, in fact, it wasn't that long ago, it was about less than 5 years ago, I went through game programming school. Everyone was trying to learn all the languages out there: JavaScript, C++, Rust, C#, freaking, I don't know, all the different types of ones. And I just focused on one, and that was pure C++. And I just kept diving down deeper and deeper and deeper into this language. And by the time we finished school and stuff, everyone's like vying for those entry positions. I got one, then suddenly I moved up to like an intermediate level within the company because I'm really good at damn C++, and then I become a senior. And by the time I'm a senior, everyone I went through school with was still juniors because they just spread their attention across so many different things and they didn't master anything. Now, is that a good or a bad thing? It depends what you're trying to go for. For me, I was just trying to get to a high-paying position as fast as possible, and I knew that specialization equals money.
Don't make any progress. They try to improve multiple things simultaneously, spreading their attention to things. Just think about it. Which is more powerful, a focused laser beam or a scattered flashlight? Now I want to show you exactly how this will play out in real life. Let me tell you a story about one of my students. Like many of you watching this video right now, she really believed in shadowing. She did it for 1 hour every single day for 6 months straight. That is some serious dedication there. But in her global team meetings, she still couldn't understand or speak up. She was very frustrated and asked me why is she putting so much effort and is getting so little result.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. If you can't even understand, why are you shadowing? If you're struggling to understand the actual language as you hear it in everyday conversation or in a business environment, then you definitely shouldn't be shadowing at this stage. You should be practicing listening comprehension.
When I explained why simultaneous shadowing doesn't work, everything clicked for her. She decided to try separating her practice, focused listening sessions, and then...
Exactly. Focus listening. Grab those audio cards or even your comprehensible input crowd. They're correct here. You just got to listen to the language and try understand it. If you don't understand it, re-go over it until you do understand it. Whatever method you use to re-go over it, it doesn't matter as long as you're listening with the intent of understanding.
Dedicated speaking practice. The difference was immediate. First,
and also because everyone always asks me, oh, what's this card system you talk about? I've got a video called The Grind. Just check it out on my channel.
Told me she felt so much better during practice. Instead of juggling multiple things at the same time, now she could actually concentrate on improving one skill at a time. Then the real results started showing. Because she could focus properly on listening practice, her meeting comprehension went up. She could finally follow complex discussions without getting lost. And because she practiced speaking separately with proper materials, her fluency improved dramatically when she spoke up.
This is why when people say, oh, all you need is CI, comprehensible input, just watch lots of videos, you'll be fine. And I'm like, yeah, it's a good strategy, but there's a better one. And a better one is where you create the specific sentences that you want to practice your listening for, and you listen to them over and over. And it's basically CI on steroids, because you're listening to the sentence over and over and over. You know what to expect. You can start listening for the specific little details in it, as opposed to waiting for these words to just randomly pop up again. Now, I know a lot of people like that natural selection, the natural SRS that occurs, because, if the word only pops up once, then obviously it's not something you're going to need very often. But again, once you get into the more advanced stages, or even the upper intermediate stages, you kind of need to do that focused listening on specific words and phrases, even if they're not frequent, because they're the main parts of the sentence, when the frequent stuff is all the stuff around it. It's like you're watching a video and you hear him and he says, oh, I picked up the X because I was Y, and you're like, what is X and Y? Yeah, I know he picked up something and I know he's something, but I don't know what he's on about.
This is what real progress look like. Let me be brutally honest with you. The only thing that should matter to a professional like you is real progress. Not how trendy your practice method is, not how many social media likes
I'm not a professional, don't tell me what to do.
It gets. And definitely not the moment of pride when you show off your shadowing skills to your friends. Let me say this again.
Wait, someone's done that before? Imagine that. It's like, hey bro, come here. He's like, hey, what's up? Check this stuff out. And then you're listening, you're repeating it, and you're just staring at him. That would be freaking weird, bro. Who does that?
None of these translate to real results. None of this will save you when it's time for you to actually perform at work. Your boss doesn't care if you spend hours doing the most popular practice technique. Your boss cares if you can lead the global meeting without missing it.
Is it really that popular? I swear, I've heard people talk about shadowing before, but it's not something that's super duper popular. The big thing that's all the buzz right now is literally comprehensible input. Everyone's talking about doing comprehensible input, but I've only heard a few people talking about shadowing, and generally when they do, they have no idea what they're on about.
Your clients don't give a damn about your fancy shadowing skills. They need you to solve their urgent problems as fast as possible. And your colleagues, they don't give a shit about how many hours you've spent practicing shadowing.
I feel like I'm being berated right now. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mum.
They care if you can explain that complex technical issue in a way that saves them time. So stop lying to yourself about your progress. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is, can you actually perform at work? Now, I'll be fair. If you are getting real results with shadowing, if your meeting engagement is getting better, if your presentations are getting better, if you are getting more clients, keep doing it.
Okay, so the only thing I want to add here on top of this is you need to be self-reflective. When you're doing something, even if it's a method I recommend, if you're not getting results, And how do you know if you're getting results? Well, basically, you need to record your results in some form or another. So as you go day by day doing whatever strategy it is, if after a month you notice that you haven't actually improved in any way through whatever method of like checking your data that you're using, then you need to be self-reflective and go, okay, maybe this just doesn't work for me. It might work for, my favorite YouTuber online type of thing, but I've got to rethink about this. So it's like, don't take anything as gospel. The only thing you should take as gospel when it comes to learning a language is that you need to practice it in some form or another every day. So that's why I talk about grinding.
Clearly it's working for you. But if you're like 99% of the people that I talk to who are frustrated with their progress, please stop shadowing. If you want to learn the practices that actually work, check out this video. In this video, I talked about the 3 highest impact practices that actually work. These practices are not fancy or sexy as shadowing, but they will give you real results. I'll see you in the next video.
Yeah, I might watch one of her videos again in the future, but overall, what do I think of her video? Well, the conclusion here is that you shouldn't do shadowing at all from her. That's her conclusion. My conclusion is shadowing can play a role specifically with accent reduction, improvement of your melody and stuff like that, but that's something you want to go to do when you're much more advanced in the language. I've done a tiny bit of it for Esperanto back in the day. That did help me improve my accent quite a bit, but like I did that after I was like completely fluent already. And yeah, you can actually improve things, even though you fossilize stuff, you can still improve it later on. So overall, I would say she didn't really give any alternatives to shadowing here. Maybe that's what this other video is. So I'm going to put this one squarely in the okay-ish video review playlist. For those who don't know, I have 3 different playlists on my channel where I review videos from other YouTubers where they give good advice, terrible advice, or okay-ish advice. And I'll see you all in the next video. And if you're not there, well, that shadow that you see behind you may not be your shadow. It may be me following you with a knife.